Hi, and welcome to another episode of our parenting podcast at Not That Different. Today, we have a very special guest with us who'll share a unique perspective to disability, that of a hands on grandparent to a young child with differential needs. Kamini Mahadevan was an editor with the Penguin Group for almost 2 decades. She's been a caregiver to her granddaughter, a child with differential needs, since her retirement, and has also been actively involved in storytelling for young children at an inclusive school here in Bangalore, and has been instrumental in setting up the library in this school to promote inclusion through books and stories. Welcome, Kamini ji, and thank you so much for agreeing to do this.
Welcome. I'm delighted. I'm delighted. Delighted
Thank
about
you.
what you're doing. Yeah.
Thank you. So first off, tell us about this pivot. You were an editor with Penguin for 20 years, and here you are, a storyteller for children about disability. You tell stories about disability. So tell us how this pivot happened.
See, what happened was that my retirement from Penguin, it coincided with the birth of my granddaughter in 2015. Now, she was born prematurely and then she had other developmental challenges. And then when she was within a month of that, we discovered that she was hearing impaired, profoundly hearing impaired. And that was a turning point in our lives because, it was a turning point because now we suddenly realized that, her parents being doctors, that we will have to have an early intervention for her if she's able to, do anything with her life. And
Yes.
so then what we did was that our goal for her was, listening and speech. So we decided to go in for a cochlear implant.
Mm.
And so I think at that point in Bangalore, she was one of the youngest to undergo the cochlear implant. And Dr. Medgeri was the person who did that cochlear implant. So almost 2 years after that, then the audio to verbal therapy went on. But then some point we hit a roadblock. And at that point, we were happy, we were very fortunate to sort of join a parents' support group for deaf and hard of hearing children, based in the US, but
Mm.
it's run by an Indian who is a veteran teacher of the deaf and hard of hearing, and it's called Suno. And so she sort of said, and it's a parent support group, so there's other children like Srishti there. And she suggested that you could, help the child and, give them more speech and language through stories and songs. And that was sort of then, the next stepping stone for me. I mean, language has been my sort of home ground for, I think, ever since I was born, and, last more professionally in the last 20 years. And so, that her sort of sessions became a master class for me to learn about language and teaching children teaching children with special needs through songs and stories. And then, of course, it was a short step to tumble into, storytelling at Srishti Montessori School, where my granddaughter went to school, but I was in a different section.
Mm. So that's I think quite a journey, right? Um, and here's my question for you. They say that it actually takes a village to raise a
Yeah.
child, right? But there's one thing that I can vouch for as a parent of an autistic young adult myself. When it comes to raising our children with diverse needs, any kind of diverse needs, it probably takes, I think, an entire country to require that much more of extra support because the journey is so different, right? And for me personally, my mother, my parent, has been my biggest support in this journey. The biggest strength giver, and I sort of derive, my strength and my willpower from her. But you, I think, are not just a very, supportive grandparent. You're a very hands-on grandparent. You're kind of doing this every day, right? So could you share a bit about your experience being such a active and hands-on grandparent for Srishti? And if there is one rewarding thing, in this journey, what has that been?
Given Shishi's multiple challenges, she explained everything, not only deaf and hard hearing, but she has other challenges also. So we soon
Hmm.
realized that because there are going to be multiple therapies and lots of follow-up at home. So clearly it would have been impossible for my daughter-in-law, any one person to do it, whether it's me, my daughter-in-law, anybody. So what we did was, the four of us, parents and grandparents, we divided up the tasks between us, what we're going to do. And for example, my husband became the sort of, he would ferry the child, he became the person who would ferry the child around back and forth from the therapies. And we live separately, my husband and I live separately, so he ran our home for us. I didn't have to bother about all that. And then we sort of joked that he babysat the four of us, including Srishti, so that we could focus on her. So in the first 2 years, in fact, I sort of accompanied my daughter-in-law to all the therapies. So, for example, and there, I would talk to the parents, and parents being mostly mothers who bring the children for therapies. And, it was quite, many of them were anguished about things. Many of them would wish they had more support from home. But so it was a strange mix of discovery for me, this whole world, and concern. I'll give you an example. She had to undergo therapy at Mobility India because she couldn't walk in order to stand and walk. So a young therapist was one vigilant and patient young girl from Odisha. She was so sweet to sort of Srishti that Srishti used to long to go and be taught by her. So that she would instruct us, what to do, what not to do at home, and with equipment and otherwise. And then, thanks to her efforts and what everybody did at home, her limbs, Srishti's limbs became stronger, then she took a few steps, and every little step was like a big victory.
Absolutely. Very hard-earned victory, because you're working for it every day. We take these things for granted, I think, as when we parent a neurotypical child, the fact that the child is walking is taken for granted. The fact that the child is running is taken for granted. The fact that the child is running and, creating disaster at home becomes a problem. But then when you have to go through this, even to achieve that milestone, I think every small step, every little victory seems like, yeah, I've done this.
Yes. No, absolutely. For her, it was so sort of, first, of course, she was toddling, and then she started walking. And she still walks, like slightly waddles. But, after, with all these ups and downs, the fact that she could do this, we just sort of, it was all the hard work and everything was forgotten after that. Yeah. And then likewise for her speech therapy. It took almost 2 years for her to be able, or rather a year for her to be able to utter syllables, respond to sounds, discriminate between sounds. But when she came up with Mama one day, and we were overjoyed, soon she was saying Tata, Pati, and Papa. So, these overall, it's these little, the most rewarding part of these journeys is that you gain however little, and with each little step, you feel, well, there is something is happening slowly, but something is happening.
Yes. There is growth, there's development. I think it just happens at its pace, and at a pace which is very different from that of a neurotypical child. But I think the growth happens, the development happens as long as you keep the faith, right?
And in fact, I think that is something which is going to accept, because now even when she goes to school, her pace of learning is, even though it's very different from other children, and we are a mix of, as I mentioned, pretty much neurotypical and neurodivergent children. And, it's her principal, mentors, special educators, and therapists, and then the family. We are a still sort of network with each other. And we try step by step by step by step. And, I think that will be the trajectory that she will follow, little by little by little.
So you have not just been a very active and hands-on grandparent, supporting, your granddaughter with those little baby steps, the first words, onto school, onto learning, but you've also been an inclusion practitioner, right? I think your journey as a grandparent has also brought you into the space of inclusion because you volunteer at an inclusive school. So if, you could tell us 2 or 3 simple, quick, easy strategies that any teacher can use in their classroom to make their classroom inclusive. Because oftentimes inclusion is seen as this massive thing, as something that is very difficult to achieve, or it is seen as something, like I have to do this because I don't have a choice. because the law says that if I had a choice, I wouldn't be doing it, kind of a thing. But oftentimes, I think it's a mindset. It takes like very simple strategies, and the class becomes inclusive, right? And enjoyable and fun for all. So, could you just, share a few such strategies with us?
It's interesting because now I've been doing this storytelling for almost 3 years with the school, in the elementary section of the school. And it has been a learning curve for me also because each child is different. Now, I mean, I think over the 3 years I've realized that one needs to treat the child and know about the child, their strengths and weaknesses. And then you have to meet the child at their level. Because, I mean, if you have to sort of engage with them and sort of have meaningful interaction with them, you have to start differentially with each child.
Yes.
So, I mean, for example, I would use the same story because we were doing picture books, but I then ask each child different questions, which I felt that they would be able to answer and we would be able to say something about it. And it's also confidence building for them, no? That when they're able to respond well, and for the children who are a little further ahead in the journey, it's also learning about the younger children who are not that ahead of the journey, ahead
Yes.
in the journey. And if I may say, it segues into the other strategy that we do. It's a buddy system. The buddy system. That you twin a child with someone who could lead the other one with more difficulty. And so for the child with sort of who could be the role model, it's great for him for their confidence, but it also leads to sensitization of that child who knows
Yes.
more about
Yes.
how to handle and interact with others, other children or others who are not that ahead in their journey.
Yeah. And I think every child brings their own strengths to the environment, right? So the child, see, the best part about buddy systems, you're saying you're a buddy. So that opens up, I think, the space for mutual learning. So it's not only the child who's mentoring, who's learning, because when you use the word mentoring, then it becomes very one-sided, right? So it's not only the mentor who's learning, the mentee who's learning, but I think it's the mentor also who learns in the process, right? Which I think is, the best part about a buddy system.
So I've had a very lovely experience. There was a boy who was bright but didn't have the confidence to answer, and he would freeze every time I asked a question. And then there was this other friend of his, his buddy, who would sit next to him, and probably great answers would emerge from this boy who would just freeze otherwise, So, and now, of course, the child is in third grade. He's so bright that I could, do lateral entry into a mainstream school at third grade. And then, of course, group activities like dancing, coloring, enactment. For the Sarah, we all did enactments together, all of us together. We had to make two masks and then we all did enactments together. And then, of course, something like word and factory. So it was very funny. I must share the story with you. I had a little boy who was again autistic nonverbal, and he had very sharp mind, so could hear everything and knew the word. So what he did was he sat in a circle and we were playing a factory. He was sitting on my lap with a word box. So when the next child said something, he quickly made the word and then he could participate. So we played several rounds like that, and he absolutely loved it. And sort of, I mean, he was cognitively all there, but had this issue, with.
Yes. I think, see, within the community and also as a parent or somebody who uses alternative mode of communication, right? This is something we've been speaking about for like really long time, just there are multiple ways of expression. It doesn't always have to be speech. And that statement matters to somebody who can't speak much because, oftentimes, the misnomer that's associated is that the person doesn't understand much. But in case of these children, that is not true, right? Their understanding is really good. So if you give them a way to express themselves, I think they can truly belong in the class, right? Inclusion can never be one size fits all. It has to be meaningful for, I think, every single child who's in there. So, which brings me to this next point, right? We often associate storytelling with something like putting a child to sleep at night, something a grandparent would tell a grandchild at home. It's kind of a way of passing on your ethos and your cultural values to a child. But I think, storytelling is also a way of enabling a very inclusive classroom, right? Because you can teach the not just the neurodivergent children, but the neurotypical children about diversity in the world. So, could you throw a bit of light about your work in that space and how storytelling promotes inclusion?
It's very interesting because now, of course, there are many publishers. I mean, Rita had this beautiful story called Catch That Cat, with this
Hmm,
little girl in a wheelchair, but she's very adept at getting around in her wheelchair,
hmm,
and
hmm,
she goes in search of her, friend, friend's cat, Chip Chip. And then the cat lands up on a tree. So what do you do? So,
hmm,
it sort of goes there nearby, tries to show the
hmm,
cat fish, so the cat will come down and eat that fish from her tiffin box. And then eventually, when the cat refuses to, then she sort of somehow pulls herself up and grabs the cat and takes the cat down. So,
hmm,
I mean, firstly, for it, I tried that story in my class. So
hmm,
naturally, the children, and they were wanting to, actually enact the thing where she's going on the wheelchair and how she's going
hmm,
around in the wheelchair. So that was a very interesting way of one of the interesting stories I tried with. And then, of course, I mean, there's this beautiful story called Kanapana by Guy
yes,
Vitika, where there's a boy who's blind. I mean, you don't know till the end that he's blind,
yes.
but he's already scolded by his parents and by his others, and then an aunt because he haven't tied the button that buttoned himself properly or anything, or worn his shoes the wrong way around, or tied his laces wrong.
Hmm,
And then his aunt comes to, you always keep scolding him. So then she
hmm,
takes him away, and then they all go to a cave,
hmm,
exploring a cave, and of course, he needs
hmm.
help. But then the light goes off, and everybody's mortally afraid. And then it's this little
It's dark and they're in a cave,
dark,
yes.
they can't see in the dark. So it is he who leads them out of the cave so I mean there's an exception lesson for the parents and thing that he has a tremendous sense of direction and everything,
Yes.
and then he's able to lead them out. So another thing which I found which is very interesting was uh, neurodivergent children need to also understand experience what it is to have a motor problem or a visual issue or
Yes.
listening or speaking issue. So what I did was I sort of said, okay, now I'm going to tie up the right hand with a piece of cloth, and the
Hmm.
left hand you have to write this sentence. And of course, all the neurodivergent, neurotypical children said, we can't do it because
We can't, we have a dominant hand. This is how we will write. This hand doesn't work for writing.
so once they realized that there were other children in my class, one of the little girls, very bright, but she did have difficulty writing. So now she only uses the laptop or I think. So that's one thing. The other time, what we did was we tied up the sort of eyes of these kids and said, now, there's a big story going on now. Can you tell me what is happening there? Or how many stripes does the tiger have? Or things like that. So then the people began to realize, yeah, if you can't see properly or hear properly, then what are you going to be able to? Can you reproduce that? And the funny thing was, once we sort of closed their ears, and then I put on the sort of the laptop with the story going on, they couldn't understand anything. It was a very strange experience for them to
Yes.
listen to a story without sound. So, I think, and I think the children realize that. They realize
Yes.
how difficult it was for them.
Absolutely. Yes, because I think it's very, easy to say in theory that, a person can't see or isn't seeing well, or a person can't hear or isn't hearing well. But you have to experience it to understand what it actually means, right? So Aditi writes, my daughter writes for this initiative called Reframing Disability. They reframe disability. It's a media initiative. So, one of the things that she had to do was to create alt text for all the Instagram posts. And she really fumbled with it, until her mentor, the person who runs this initiative, told her, think of it like this. you've created this design. Shut your eyes, right, and remember the design. You can't see it to describe it. So how would you describe it for some person who can't see it, right? And it requires so much of mentoring and so much of iteration for her to even get how to write an alt text right. So I think until you experience it, you sort of don't understand what it is for and what it feels like, I think, to be in another person's shoes for whom that is an everyday life, right?
I think that, and at the school level, if this kind of training is done, I think
Hmm.
somewhere it will stick. One can't
Yes.
say how it will come out or things, but one hopes that empathy will come through, that empathy will come through.
It does, because children are not conditioned, right? It's easier to teach children than it is to teach an adult, because adults come from a space of conditioning, children don't. So if children experience this, I think they will understand it way better than adults do. So, yeah. So I have another question for you, Kamini ji. See, oftentimes when a child, who's somewhat different, quote unquote different, is born in a family, right? And we Indians being what we are, with our extended families, it becomes very difficult for many grandparents, forget supporting the family, forget supporting the parents. I think it becomes very difficult for many grandparents to even accept the child for what the child is, right? And that becomes a challenge, because many a times it ends up in a lot of blame game. It ends up in a lot of, you shouldn't have done this and that's why the child is like this, or it's the bad karma. But for our neurodivergent children, like for any other children, right, just the experience of being bonding and growing up with a grandparent is something very different. It is something very beautiful and to be enjoyed. So and you are a grandparent who's so hands-on, right? You're so into it. From an editor, you've become an inclusion practitioner because of your journey with your granddaughter. So if there's something that you have, a little message for other grandparents, what would that be?
Yeah, I think the first thing is totally unconditional acceptance. You know, uh, Trying to find a cause for disability is a futile, I feel, task, because most sort of causes are speculations. It's almost impossible. How do you say that? What is the cause for an autistic child? I mean, come on, there is no.
It's genetics, if we have to say it, and then the day we come down to it, it becomes an argument. So,
I
you
think
know,
this sort of trying to find a cause leads to blame. And frankly, I mean, I tell everybody, no one is to blame. Neither the mother nor the father. It is one of the things of nature. And
yes,
uh, I said, look, we always think we are separate from the whole plant kingdom and from the animal, the evolution, but we are not. I mean, at one level, we're also part of the same journey. And
yes.
you know, uh, in nature, you have also anomalies in plants or in animals. So let's not run away from the fact that we could also be in that same position.
And disability itself and ability is so temporary, right? I mean, if I fall down and fracture my leg, I'm disabled till I recover.
Yeah,
So, ability is a very temporary thing, right?
absolutely, absolutely. And the other thing is, I think that two things in this whole journey. One thing is also that the parents, the couple, if who are they're going to have to, and grandparents will pass on, but it's the couple who have ultimately to deal with the uncertainty of the child's future. First and foremost, they have to pick themselves up, reorganize their careers. After many of them have both parents work, and so it becomes even more important for the grandparents to handle not just the child, but also the parents who need
Yes.
that kind of love and support. I mean, like grandparents, one can do what would do with any grandchild of one. I mean, tell them stories, do the same thing, prepare the child's favorite food, cuddle them, play with them, and that of course goes without saying. And of course, within the play, then the therapy and the goals of the therapy can be incorporated intelligently by the parents and with the support of mentors. So, I mean, that becomes part of the sort of enjoyment. And then I
Yes.
think the other thing is enjoy the playing, that the grandparents need to enjoy the company of the child. It isn't a duty. If one can move from that duty paradigm to chronic paradigm, it's a wonderful way for the child to interact with it and also self-confidence for the child. And
Yes.
I do also think that the grandparents need to, and the parents talk about the child's disability with relatives, well-wishers, friends. Share the child's strengths and positive. Take the child to all family gatherings and social engagement. There may be some missteps, but so what? No need to be embarrassed about it.
Exactly, exactly. I mean, inclusion begins at home, right? If at home, as parents, as grandparents, as caregivers, we aren't comfortable around our own child. I mean, obviously, that comfort is going to take time to come. But if we aren't comfortable around our own child, we cannot expect the world to be comfortable around them, right? If we can't accept them for what they are, you can't expect everybody else around in the ecosystem to accept them for what they are.
No,
Which
and I think that's the moment one accepts it and freely lets the child mix with everybody. I mean, at a wedding, I know she would love dancing and it was noisy and sensory overload and all that, but she would love to go up and dance. And, and then in a community apartment complex, everybody knows about her difficulty. So
is,
we are now known as Srishti's grandparents. And Srishti's
yes,
parents. She is the most popular person around. And a lot
yes.
of people and giving little gifts for her and just stop and talk to her and so I think that gives the child self-confidence and acceptance.
True, true. And I think that's probably the best thing we can do for our children as parents, grandparents, caregivers, right? If they feel confident in their own skin, feel confident about themselves. I mean, life is what it is, right? Even for a neurotypical child who's doing brilliantly well in academics, there's no guarantee the child is going to achieve massively, right? It's all a question. It's game theory, it's probabilities. Probability of a child with more difficulties achieving maybe less, but it's a probability. It's not a certainty. The probability of a brilliant child achieving more is also a probability, not a certainty, right? But I think if they are happy being who they are, I think half the battle is won.
And
So,
it's amazing, and one is constantly surprised when takes them to all environments which one oneself enjoys. I mean, I love going to galleries, picture galleries, and concerts and things. So now Shifty wants to go to galleries. She's party is taking to gallery, and she loves looking at paintings. And then one uses that opportunity to make her understand, say about what light and shape in this sort of thing. So it's an education enjoyment which I love, which she enjoys. So
yes.
that makes
It's learning and growth, which is very organic, right? Something no therapy can achieve as effectively as this.
or going to a mall. I mean, what
Yes.
is shopping? And I mean, she loves going to a mall, but she loves going out to eat. And she knows all her choice. Burma. We are going to do this, and we'll go to Burma after that. She knows the places where she loves to go to. So, so and of course, naturally, there are little sort of missteps, but so what? And,
It's okay. Who doesn't make mistakes?
yeah.
I mean, that's how we all learn, right? It was such a pleasure talking to you, Kaminichi. I really, wish more grandparents heard this. While I myself come from a family where I have been extensively supported to support my child, I know there are like many, women out there, many men out there whose families don't exactly think that way, right? So they, go through this double. I don't know. I mean, it's like, they're being hit from both sides. The child is different. They have to figure out what to do with their child. Their own careers are at stake and they've got to figure out how they're going to readjust their own schedules. Plus, the extended family, their parents and their in-laws are, sort of not being able to accept this and in a sense end up blaming them, for whatever's happened. So that is a very unenvious position to be in. I really wish more grandparents and, more people heard this. It was such a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.